Dana, New York, what up?
Hello, it is a pleasure to speak to you. This,
Likewise.
this show is something else. First of all, you got the special effects, the mystery behind everything. It feels like it's sci-fi, and you have these stories with these people, and they're very human. With that said, can you shed light a little bit more about your character? Because we do know that your character ends up in kind of like the sinkhole that is a whole nother world.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's lovely to meet you, Dana.
Thank
And
you.
where are you in New York right now?
I'm in New York City, yes.
Nice, nice. What up, New York? So yeah, Ty Coleman is a psychiatrist by trade. And as a man who's studied the brain and has studied human relationships and connections and behavior, you would think that he's quite well equipped actually to find himself in this primeval world. But as you say, from the pilot, he's in a bad place. And we meet him at the lowest ebb in his life. And so the great thing for me as an actor was to be able to discover and uncover what makes Ty tick, how he's going to respond to the situation he finds himself in, how he's going to respond to the rest of the group. Does he fall into being the psychiatrist and be there to try and help people? Or does he keep on devolving down this path where, he no longer wants to live, quite frankly? So it was a really great adventure to play as an actor, but also as I hope for the audience, I hope it's a really incredible journey for them to go on and watch how he deals with this as well.
Sorry, I was muted. So with that said, your character, he's dealing a lot with a lot of mental stress, you could say, with that. With that going forward, where would you say his mental strength would be when he finds himself in this new kind of world, and why, whether or not he should keep on going?
It's a great question. So yeah, we've been drawing a lot of parallels with this show to what we're going through in the real world right now. 18 months ago, the world was turned on its head. Everything that we knew changed. And it really did put a lot of mental stress on a lot of people. And also it's meant that a lot of people have felt that they can't see a place for themselves in the world anymore. And it's been really encouraging to see a lot of support for people's mental health being pushed in on social media and on the news. And I think as a society, we're much more open to discussing mental health issues, and especially within the Black community. It's not something that we tend to talk about a lot,
right.
And so it was important for me to portray that as well, but also as a professional to be able to say, look, not everyone has it together. Even someone who knows the human brain and what it all comes down to finds himself in this position where he feels like he can't live anymore. But to further answer your question, in the pilot, we see that when he's faced with going through with his decision or helping someone who's trying to help her son, he chooses to help that woman and help her son, because it's sort of innate in Ty to help people. And that was a really lovely thing to play as well. It was the best part of the job, actually.
Would you say that choosing to help someone else is in a way of servicing himself? By look at what I can still do by choosing to not end it all?
It's a great question. I keep saying that because it is a question. I don't want to give too much away, but you're absolutely right. I think for Ty in particular, we'll discover as the season progresses that he was in that position in the pilot for a reason. He felt as though he had nowhere else to go, no more purpose. And the great thing that I have discovered through Ty, it's actually two things. It's the importance of having a purpose and the importance of perseverance. So I think with those two things in mind, I don't want to go too much more into it, but that's the journey. That's certainly the journey that Ty goes on in this first season.
Will the journey kind of include him seeing life in a different light?
I think for everyone who is thrown into the sinkhole, it definitely does for everyone. And again, that's the parallel there as well between what the characters are going through in the sinkhole and what we're all going through on Earth in 2021, because I think the pandemic has shone a different light on, I've got so many great friends who have learned how to play the guitar or released music for the first time because it's always been their dream to be a singer, and they've gone and lived their dreams. And then for others, it's been a difficult journey, and so many people have lost jobs and have had to rebirth themselves. But I think it's a challenge for those of us who are in the sinkhole in the show. And I really hope that the audience can relate to that challenge because of what we've all been going through, and maybe ask themselves questions about how they would respond and see some inspiration in the show for how they can, move things in their lives, even though the world is so up in the air at the moment.
Right. Now, this may be me overthinking things, but do you feel that the sinkhole chose that location and those people at that moment for purpose? Was there actual reason?
I like the deep questions. And that's the stuff that I would think about for my character, because there is a random element to it in the show. But as we go through this first season, I think we'll start to discover that even though it can seem random, that nothing's random, that there is a design to everything. And I don't mean to sound sort of metaphysical or philosophical about it. It's just those people were all on that stretch of Wilshire Boulevard at that time for a reason. And some people got away, and lots of people ended up in the hole. So I think for the characters in the hole, eventually it would be nice to think that they would start to see a reason that it was them who was chosen for that journey.
Right. Now, we know, because we've seen also in the trailers and everything, it seems to be like another world that once was. We see the birds coming out, and there's possibility of some dinosaurs or some really big beasts that you would say. Can you talk a little bit from the actor standpoint? What was that like filming? Was there a lot of green screen? Was you acting to just tennis balls? Did they show you the layout beforehand?
Yeah, it was a great part of the journey, actually, because I've done some films before where there's been visual effects, of course, but there was almost every week, every episode, there's something new that we're dealing with. And actually, the technology has moved on from the tennis balls. There are sometimes physical performers who would be wearing entirely blue lycra from head to toe, so they could be painted out and the creature could be painted in, and that was helpful to have a frame of reference. But more often than not, it was nothing. It was us acting to thin air and using our imaginations and really trying to raise the stakes internally so that we were meeting the challenge head on. And then we had such great actors on this show. Natalie Z, John Sader, we got to work together a lot on these early episodes, and we work off each other, we match each other's energies. So that was a really enjoyable part of the process too.
Right. Now, did your imagination world kind of also kind of reflect what was actually really there, or was it like, oh, when you see the final product, it's like, that's not what I thought at all?
Well, actually, you asked in your previous question, what was there some framework? We had some really great renderings. So we knew what some of the creatures would look like. We knew what some of the landscape would look like, but mostly it was imagination. So when, I've seen the pilot as well, and I was like, wow, I wasn't expecting that at the very end of episode 1. It looked slightly different, but I'm really grateful that they were so skilled in putting it together and in editing it so well, because it really does feel as though we're there being faced by those things.
Right. Now, there are a lot of different personalities that are involved both outside the hole and inside of the hole. Can you talk a little bit about what their worst qualities would be and how that kind of goes against what your best quality would be, trying to get out of the sinkhole and lead them to kind of greater pasture, or at least?
Yeah, so I think, the immediately from the very beginning, from the pilot, we see that this is a stressful situation and human instincts to survive kick in, but also greater instincts, like we see from John Sader's character, Dr. Sam. He's immediately to it. We need food, we need water, we need to work out how to protect ourselves. And so it's important to have those characters, but also, it would be a tough situation to find yourself in. So I think the great thing about Ty is he doesn't have judgment, because he's a psychiatrist. He understands the stress on human beings. And even straight from the pilot, we see that he likes to make people aware that they can't control everything, that there's an element to life that is random. There's an element to life that is out of our control. And by him supporting people in the pilot, it's Eve, he supports her character for a moment. And I think it's a support to Eve, but it's also, like you were saying earlier, it also gives him a sense of purpose. So it's nice for him to feel like he's useful again. And we'll find out more about that as the season progresses. Well, you're back on mute. Oh.
Would Ty be his own therapist? Because he needs therapy himself.
Yeah, there's a great thing, isn't there, that lots of therapists actually are in therapy, and I think it's an important part of the process. I was really lucky to meet with a psychiatrist here in LA, Dr. Anandi, and I really don't want to butcher her last name, but Dr. Anandi was so helpful to me in just uncovering so many different elements of what it means to be a psychiatrist. I also spoke with a psychiatrist in Australia where we were shooting, Dr. Kieran Kennedy, and both of them were just really fountains of information. But yeah, you're right. Ty is in need of support when we meet him. And I think he would have been in therapy in LA in the real world, but down here he has to work out other ways to survive.
So would you say that because of this incident, that would be the key to why he doesn't want to kill himself in that sense?
Yeah, I think this incident certainly forces him to make different decisions. We see it in the pilot. Right. He was ready. He was right there about ready to do it. But when he's faced with going through with that decision or helping someone else, I think Ty's instincts is always to help, is always to support other people. And maybe as the season progresses, we'll discover like how that plays out. And there are actually some really pivotal moments for Ty on this journey that I just can't wait for viewers to see.
Right. Is there a moment, because even though you have the chaos and the stress that the character is going through, is he able to see kind of the beauty that he is in?
Not immediately, not at all at the beginning, but it was also the case for us as actors. Like, we were in the wilderness, in the middle of nowhere in Australia. And the thing that most people told me when I was coming to Australia, be careful, everything kills you there, everything can kill you there. And it's true, there are lots of very wild animals, and it's the small ones, it's the tiny venomous insects you have to be aware of. So yeah, we were out there in the wilderness. So it was tricky as an actor to be in that environment. And I imagine if this were to really happen, it would be very tricky for the people who find themselves in that primeval world to work out, first of all, what is going on? How did we find ourselves here? Ty's first question is, are we alive? Like, how is this even possible? So yeah, there were definite parallels between us as actors and the characters in the show, but it was also an adventure for both. For me as an actor, it was a great adventure to go on. I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, but I really did enjoy the adventure aspects of being there in Australia, seeing a different part of the world. It was phenomenal.
So was there any kind of training, either survivalist training, that you had to go through while filming and being on location?
The great thing is our characters would not have had that training. So as actors, we were just really thrown into the deep end. And I like that. I like to approach a character from understanding what it is that he knows, understanding what he's experienced and how that might relate to the environment he now finds himself in. And so, yeah, Ty is a learned guy. He's a guy who got a PhD. He trained, first of all, in the UK, moved to the US for college, for university, and, has been wearing cardigans and sitting behind desks or sitting on couches speaking to people for most of his career. So he's not necessarily a shoo-in for someone who would respond brilliantly to this environment that he finds himself in, but he does know how to relate to people. And I think that skill is really helpful for him.
Would at any moment, because some people would equate that high society sense of education would be a bit more of a cocky kind of attitude, is there at any point that will come across?
No, thankfully for Ty, because he finds himself in this really dark place at the beginning. I think the majority of this first season is him finding his way back, clawing his way back. Maybe we'll see some of that element of him later on, but for now it's been about finding his way back to sort of neutral, back to just being a human being who wants to live another day again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for speaking to me. I truly enjoyed the first episode.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.